そして時は巡り頃は春。
There's
い
our
よ
time
いよ
skip.
約束の日が訪れる。
リゼンブール名物春の羊祭りですよ。
Reasonable.
そんな日にすまない。水の補給がしたいのだが。タンク下ろせ。
Ah, that's a lot of tanks. Reasonable tanks. They seem to be struggling. Yeah, there's got to be people in there. Oh, that's great.
着いたよお嬢ちゃん。
Hey.
うちの匂いだ。
Yeah.
作りかけは触らないでね。
Yeah, she looks older. Yeah, she does. Oh. He didn't notice her come in?
どうした？エドワード・エルリック？
Hey. Ah.
何やってんだお前ら。
The whole squad's here.
ちょっとエド、一体何がどうなってるの？
話せば長いことなんだが、
大体私の部屋で何してたのよ。
たまには外を見ながら食べたかったんだよ。
乙女の部屋から出てけ。
Ah.
心配した。
おお、そっちこそ無事で。あるは一緒じゃないのか。
エド、アルが駅にいるのよ。マイルズさんと一緒に急げばまだ間に合うかもしれない。
She's grown up, all right. Look at
どうした
this.
の？
俺たちはセントラルのお尋ね者だ。
Look how tall he looks.
誰かに見られたらまずいんだ。
Wow, yes. Beautiful focus pull there.
羊祭りか。
And the moving camera.
懐かしいな。
今度帰ってくる時には元の体に戻っているといいな。
Aww.
はい。
ウィンリー？おかえり。むさ苦しいのが増えたね。
お騒がせして申し訳ありません。自分たちはブリッグズ兵であります。
リンだよね。
え？お前こいつの知り合いか？グリードだ。よろしくね。
は？
今こいつら俺の手下。
なんでここに来たの？
ことに備えてこいつのオートメールの手入れとか万全にしときたくてな。
後で見てやんな。お前が作ったオートメールだから。そっか。リオールは立ち直ったのか。
Oh, now tell
よ
me.
かった。気になってたんだ。
ブリッグズの人たち、東部の演習場で何かやるらしいの。あるはそれを手伝えるんじゃないかって自分から。
そっか。
Look at this. Split diopter
約束の
shot.
意なんでしょ。
俺もグリードから聞いた。元に戻れるチャンスでもあり、この国に大惨事が起こるかもしれない日だ。ばっちゃんとデン連れて外国に逃げとけ。
Bro, you cannot ask her. Yeah.
逃げろって何よ。身内だけ逃がしてどうすんの。
止めてやるよ。止めてやるけど万が一ってことがあんだろうが。
万が一も奥が一もない。とんでもないことやろうとしてるんでしょ。そんなのぶっ潰してこの国守ってよ。そんでエドもアルも元の体に戻って帰ってきてよ。そのためなら私何でもするよ。
Is there anything beyond that? Look at this. She's looking up at him now.
何よ、弱気になるなんてあんたらしく。ちょっとエド。
なあ、ギャーギャーうるせえ女だな。
エ
いいねあの女。
Sure is.
あれもこれもと強欲で。
強すぎる欲なんてろくなもんじゃねえよ。見ろ、 死んだ人間を欲したらこのざまだ。
Man knows all about it.
死んだ奴に会いたいも、金が欲しいも、女が欲しいも、世界を守りたいも、全部欲する心。すなわち願いだ。
Spot on.
俺に言わせりゃ、欲にいいも悪いもね。
Necessary?
欲っつうもんに偉そうに格付けするから、人間はややこしいんだよ。
オートメール整備してくれてありがとうよ。
ホーエンハイムに会うことがあったらトリシャの言葉伝えるんだよ。
エド、私。
お前はちゃんと隠れてろよ。約束の人やらに全部終わらせて帰ってくっから。アップルパイでも焼いて待ってろ。
もうすぐ約束の日だぞ。しょうがねえだろ。マルコさんもスカーも来ないんだから。まったくあの二人どこで何を。おお先生。おお君たち。おお君たちじゃないぜ。元軍人の俺たちがイシュバール人と一緒に行動するなんてよ。そうそう。俺たちにとっちゃアメストリスは生まれた故郷だし、国に反逆してたスカーが今こうしてこの国を救うために動いてるなんてな。
勘違いするな。この国を救うのではない。変えるのだ。イシュバールの民を否定したこの国に我らの存在を認めさせるため俺は動いている。
世界を変えるためにはまず己が変わらねばならぬ。そういうことだ。アメストリス人よ。
Let's go. Let's go.
何ヶ月もただほっつき歩いてたわけじゃないのだよ。
Perfect.
志を共にする仲間たちだ。
しかしちと厄介なことになってな。
厄介なこと。
なんとブラッドレイちゃんが見物に来たんだよね。
Oh yeah. He's disappearing, isn't he? He comes and goes now.
あっちに引っ張られる間隔がだんだん短くなってる。
Oh.
似合う。
Oh.
鋼の錬金術師の弟の
The return into the field at least.
逃げるの。
Ah. Like the lamppost, it's all this a sign. If the promised day is upon us, like soon enough, they need to sacrifice it, right? Father, that is.
こんな時にまた。
約束の日までおとなしくしていてもらいますよ。アルフォンス・エルリック。
Whoa, 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 back up, back up, back up.
それにしても広い屋敷ですね。
Yeah.
さすがアームストロング家。中隊、いや大隊くらいは入りそうだ。
Is that so?
遅ればせながらアームストロング家当主になられたお祝いです。
So they do have plans, huh? Or she had plans for the
ヒヤ
mansion.
シンス。セリム・ブラッドレーはホムンクルス。
ご存知ですか？ヒヤシンスの花言葉。
Do tell.
知らん。
しとやかな可愛らしさ。
余計なお世話だ。
それではこれにて閣下。
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
東と北の合同演習はおとりです。閣下が東にいることにより手薄になったセントラルでイシュバールの残党がテロを行います。そしてグラマン中将はテロ鎮圧を口実にセントラルに侵攻。
Now.
マスタング大佐と呼応し混乱に乗じて中央司令部を乗っ取る計画です。
How does this man know all this? Who gave him this information?
私はセントラルに戻る。あとは任せたぞ。
は、
But even that could be by design, right? Oh boy. Yeah, you stopped already.
どうしたんだ羊だ急いでいるというのに
Now of all times.
機関車だけが動き出したぞ何どうなってるおい止めさせろ
I mean, he'll survive it, but the rest are goners.
まんまと利用されましたな
They fed him
白
the
の
info.
少々閣下の乗った列車が爆破されましたぞの
He's fine, of course. Hey, let's go.
明日全てが動き出す。やるべきことをやるわよ。ブレダ少尉、フューリー総長。
少尉は勘弁してください。今はただの脱走兵ですよ。
お先真っ
Yeah,
暗
he's
だ。
been through it.
全部終わったら大佐に責任取ってもらいましょう。
キングブラッドレーが死ぬなど
No, man,
ま
come on
だ
now.
そうと決まったわけではなかろう
頭がいなくなった途端これだ。
俺に私の仕事
所詮は右往の衆、動くチャンスか。
おおこのようなところにおいでになられるとはみんな落ち着けセントラルには私がいる
Okay, so look at that. Father has to step in himself, or he is finally making, the choice to step in, as it is almost the promised day, right? But also because of this potential loss of King Bradley, Wrath, the Fuhrer. Nah, come on now. All of us know he's out there. He got out of there. There's 18 episodes to go. That is not how King Bradley is going out. No chance. But that being said, the rest of them are gone. Long gone, of course. But yeah, King Bradley got out of there. But that being said, let's not forget that he is one of the unique cases as far as the homunculi go. He does have just the one soul inside of his Philosopher's Stone. So yeah, his situation is a little bit different. But to balance that out, you see that he is perhaps, if not the most formidable, that's perhaps Pride. But he's certainly right up there. Right, that's how it kind of balances out. He does have the one soul inside of that Philosopher's Stone, but then it also is perhaps one of the most difficult homunculus to actually kind of kill. Right, so in any potential endgame scenario, I think for them to potentially take out King Bradley, to take out Wrath, it is going to require something unique, something tremendous, something ingenious. But yeah, of course, Father, accompanied by Sloth, has shown his face up top, and it's quite the honor for a lot of these sheep. I call them sheep because the other guy also kind of had a really, really interesting line of dialogue, right? They've cleared all the sheep from the tracks, right? Now this guy who's got the yellow streaks, I don't recognize him, but I'm sure there's some sort of attachment, connection to others. But I do like the setup of having Wrath just be out there, right? This unknown, essentially, as of this point, they essentially do believe and feel that they got rid of him, they took care of him, right? So his re-entry, his reintroduction at some point in these final 18 episodes is going to be pretty shocking and jarring, pretty iconic as well, most likely, right? And shocking and jarring for a lot of these people that are trying to stop all of this, right? The promised day is upon us. I mean, it's there. It's essentially there now, isn't it? And this really felt like I said earlier, the calm before the storm, even though it is also a time skip at the same time, right? So yeah, it was also like a check-in episode. This is how things are. Now, that being said, it didn't really check in on everyone. I don't know about Kimberly. I don't know about Mei Chang. And I'm sure at some point, Lan Fan and, God damn it, I forgot her grandpa's name again. Yeah, I'm sure they are also going to come back in at some point. Al's still kind of experiencing his out of armor experiences. It's been escalating quite a bit over the span of that time skip. So much so that there's moments in this episode that it cuts to Al and he's not there, right? Again, out of armor experience going on. So yeah, of course that's concerning. And, maybe it also plays a part in, the growth spurt that Ed is clearly experiencing, right? I thought his growth is already noticeable in the episodes leading up to this episode, but here, it's the most definitive and clear indication and, a visual depiction of his growth. So, this connection, maybe, it's kind of fading. And because of that, maybe his body isn't kind of required to, provide the nutrients for Ed's body as well. Sorry, not Ed, Al's body as well, right? Beyond the gate. So, it's like a double-edged sword. Yes, it's great to see our boy grow up, physically, of course, but also that's a bit of an indicator about the connection to Al's body, right? But, beyond that, it could just simply be a case of it's that point. It's that point in his life. It's that point in his growth that he is experiencing that growth, around that time, around that age. Yeah, most people experience growth. So I think it's essentially a combination of a lot of these things. He's at that point in life and, this concerning situation that his brother is experiencing at the moment, right? And the potential fading of that connection that they do have, that they've established a long time ago at this point. So yeah, listen, I'll be honest, seeing Al so lonely, it was really quite sad. And also I found it kind of strange that Al's just been left on that train, that parked train. He's just kind of there. And of course he's kind of checked out at that moment because his soul's getting pulled on. But yeah, I felt that it was a little bit strange to just have Al out there by himself, just on a train like that, right? Of course, you see that it appears that gluttony and pride are perhaps in charge of collecting these sacrifices, right? And they've acquired one of them, and it didn't help that he starts to fade out in the middle of that struggle. So they've got Alphonse Elric that leaves his brother Ed, his father Hohenheim, Izumi Sensei, and still the open slot, number 5. And then, of course, throughout the span of this series, going all the way back to some of the first few episodes, it's been, hinted at and established that Roy Mustang is one of these important candidates for sacrifice, right? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how exactly Roy Mustang becomes a sacrifice. Kind of goes from an important candidate to an important sacrifice, potentially. Though, of course, the one thing that's been clear to us, the audience, for some time now, is that to be a sacrifice, you need to be someone who has opened the gate, who has faced the truth, right? So for that to happen, Roy Mustang is going to do that at some point in the next few episodes, not even the next 18 episodes. It's got to be in the next few episodes because you could see that things are escalating. Father himself is stepping out, and they are now actively trying to collect the sacrifices, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they go about getting Ed, how they go about getting Hohenheim. But I firmly believe that Hohenheim is almost ready for this to happen. I've kind of discussed it in a few of my post-episode discussions that maybe he needs all of this to take off in order to kind of implement his plan, right? The counter to it all. But then also, there's this possibility that he is thinking about his children, his sons, and their bodies. Maybe he does want the gates to be open, the portal, to be opened. Like Ling mentioned in the last episode, I believe that you and your brother can get your bodies back if you jump in at that point, right? Maybe that's playing a part as well in Hohenheim's mind. But you can see through Ed's reaction, his interesting reaction, that it's not as simple as that, is it? That they just kind of jump in, they get their bodies back, done and dusted. No, he's thinking about the other things as well. Something along the lines of, oh, sure, maybe me and Al can get our bodies back. And then in Ed's case, his arm and leg, I suppose. But also at the same time, the country could be facing this immense tragedy, right? So you see he's kind of torn at the moment. Hell, maybe in the endgame of this, maybe in its final moments, maybe at that moment specifically, and I say that moment loosely, right? But, this moment, imagine they kind of reach this moment, and it's essentially kind of them between a rock and a hard place, right? Making a choice, perhaps. Do they want their bodies back? Is Al going to get his body back? Or do you do something that is going to stop this? Or something that is going to end up being crucial in stopping this, right? I could see that situation coming up, right? A tough task, a moment under pressure, right? To allow some more of that true character to shine through. Now, listen, ultimately, I do believe that Al is going to end up getting his body back. You know, that's just something I hope for and I believe is going to happen. And, you know, perhaps Ed is going to get his limbs back as well. Perhaps. You know, listen, ultimately, I think Ed should be fine. If you know, he's kind of stuck in this situation, you know, his arm and leg is automail, he'll be fine. He'll be fine, right? Of course, it's not ideal, but he'll be fine for the rest of his life. But Al, you know, if Al doesn't get his body back, it's, you know, he's going to be lost forever. And it's really getting to that point now, right? So I'll know soon enough, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it's about to play out over the span of essentially, let's see, let's kind of allocate the adequate amount of time to this, you know, promised date, and then everything it's going to encapsulate in terms of the things that need to happen, right? So, you know, this is something that's been building up and building towards for centuries at this point, right? Look at it from someone like Father's perspective, though, of course, you know, time is superfluous to someone like Father. But yeah, you know, it is really the big moment of this series, isn't it? So out of the final 18 episodes, I'd say roughly, I think you could allocate maybe 12 to 14 episodes, perhaps. 12 to 14 episodes to this promised day encounter endgame moment of the series. It's certainly not something that can be presented and wrapped up over the span of 5-6 episodes. It's just not, especially given the fact that there's so many different parties out there, so many different groups out there now, right? It needs to kind of, it's starting to feel like Lord of the Rings, folks. It really does have this epic feeling about it now. That, you know, over the span of these potentially 12, 14 episodes, maybe less, maybe more even, that I am going to get something really quite epic from episode to episode, right? Because it has to kind of check in on so many different groups and their task in all of this, right? I'm really quite excited, really excited for all of this. But, you know, that being said, this also has great potential for a lot of aftermath episodes. I love a good aftermath. You know, sometimes, you know, a series kind of ends. It'll be the final episode. It kind of concludes, all the major plot points kind of get wrapped up. And then you get maybe like 5 to 8 to 10 minutes of aftermath. You know, sometimes it kind of leaves you a little bit hollow, doesn't it? So I'm really hoping for a few episodes of aftermath, especially given the scope of this story, the scale of this story, and the incredible ensemble cast that's been a part of this story. And listen, I'm really quite happy and excited that I was able to execute that multiple episode plan some time ago at this point, because yeah, it's getting to the point, a really exciting point, the crescendo of the series. And yeah, you know, just 4 episodes a month, that would have been painful for me, and I'm sure for you guys as well. So I'm sure you guys are quite excited about the multiple episodes as well. Listen, maybe, you know, in this phase of the series, maybe it'll do a little bit better on YouTube. Listen, I love this series. I'm enjoying it. I've enjoyed it so much up until this point. I'm so excited for the final moments of this series, these final 18 episodes. But if I'm being honest, it feels like it kind of failed as a series on YouTube. It kind of flopped. Of course, there's many factors that can kind of go into it. Listen, a lot of people ask for a lot of older series on the channel. You know, there's a lot of recommendations, a lot of interest for a lot of older series, things like Monster. Listen, you know, that's one of the most recommended series on the channel at this point. And of course, I'll get to it. I'm really interested in that anime. And listen, if it doesn't end up coming out on top in a poll, I'll just end up doing it on my own anyways. I'll just start it one day, right? Once the timing is right, once I do have some time and space to sneak it in. If it doesn't come out on top in a poll. But that being said, I'm pretty sure that Monster is probably going to end up being on the same level as this in terms of engagement, interest, maybe even less. It's possible. So I have to, you know, prepare myself for that. You know, listen, I have content creator friends that are in positions to legitimately just do any anime, anything on their channel, and it's going to be a hit. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that play into it as well. But, you know, I'm not in a position to have that luxury, you know? So I really do have to think about the stuff I commit to, because a lot of time and effort goes into it. It does. So long story short, if you're interested in some anime and you've been, really recommending it and you've been talking about it, once it does end up happening, it really helps if you do show up, be it in the comments and just actually showing up to check it out as well. Dropping that thumbs up, all of that, it helps. But listen, enough of this. Let's get back to the episode. I called it a bit of a Calm Before the Storm episode. I really enjoyed that aspect of this, especially, Reasonable, all the segments in Reasonable, Winry and Ed and Greed and the Chimera, everyone kind of being under the same roof. To me, it even kind of served as this reminder that this is the thing that they're all trying to protect, the freedom to be around people you love, to be around your friends, to spend time with your friends, family, all of that, right? People coming together. This is the thing that is worth protecting, right? They cannot let this country fall. But also, how about that reunion? Ed and Winry together. Yes, it gets a little bit spiky at times, and I think that's realistic, right? Given the situation, given the promised day kind of looming above their heads and the connotations attached to it. But, I just find it so lovely. And of course, a lot of comedic moments as well, a lot of fun moments. You see that both her and Ed somehow missed each other inside of that room, and she kind of continues to undress, almost gave Ed an eyeful, essentially. I mean, he saw a bit, and you see his reaction to it all. And then, of course, everyone kind of rushing up. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It really is. It's great fun. But I thought it was lovely that perhaps for a few days at this point, Ed kind of goes to her room to eat, right? Clearly, he's been missing her, and she's been missing him. And also, at that point, you can see that there is this unstated understanding that they both care for each other. They have feelings for each other, right? Beyond just friendship. But right now is not the time to escalate any further. Let's kind of come back to that, down the line. Hopefully, all of this is wrapped up and they kind of come back to this, and let's see how it kind of moves on from that point on. I kind of joked about, is there anything beyond that point? Once they come back and they have their bodies back, and of course, Ed later does kind of reassure her that yes, he'll do everything in his power to stop this, right? Listen, does he completely believe it, or is it just a case of him making sure that he tells her this before they leave, potentially the last time he sees her, right? Because she's staying behind and he's going off, and the promised day is upon us. So yeah, there's a potential that could have been their last goodbye. So, Ed kind of ends off on a nice note, right? A beautiful note, actually. Tells her, have that apple pie ready. And then, of course, that brings Al into it as well, because Al really wants to try that apple pie. It's been on his list, one of the items on his list. So it's a beautiful moment. It is. And also, I think it's a respectful moment because he's telling her that he respects her decision to stick around and, see this out. And also, you have to give her credit because earlier, after he kind of alludes to her and Granny getting out of there, getting to some foreign land and be safe, one of her first thoughts is, how come only the people that are close to you get to do this, right? She's caring about everyone else. But also, that being said, in that moment, she does kind of end up putting a bit of pressure on Ed, doesn't she? She's like, this is not like you to be doubting yourself, to be doubtful. And you see Ed's reaction to all of that as well. She's like, do this, stop them from doing this, then get your bodies back. And then, of course, outside of that room, on the stairs, you have the boss of the crew, Greed, just hanging out. And kind of, he gets the gist of that conversation. And that actually ends up being one of the more interesting parts of this episode, doesn't it? The conversation about the nature of greed and the perception of greed. Right, that Greed himself believes that it's neither good or bad, and that ultimately everyone wants something. Everyone does have greed, right? It certainly gives Ed a moment of pause, and then he kind of links it to Ed's current situation, right? This notion of saving the world, and even that being a form of greed, right? But yeah, I think he's spot on. I think Greed is spot on. Yes, Greed does have the actual greedy aspect to him as well. But, beyond that, it really makes you think about the sins and their function in the story as a whole, right? Ultimately, these sins are not inherently just straight out evil. Think about it. Wrath, lust, pride, and greed, all of us partake, It's normal. It's human nature, right? That's the whole reason Father, made the choice to kind of extract all of that out of him, and kind of left himself as this empty husk. But of course, all of us have those traits, right? Lust, of course, all of us have lust. Greed, of course, wrath, pride, right? The key, of course, is moderation, isn't it? Right? In excess, of course, it's destructive, but ultimately it's all part of human nature, crucial even, right? Again, moderation being the key takeaway from this. If you look at the sins, it's been firmly established throughout the story that, it's not this one-dimensional take on the sins either, right? A one-dimensional take on their names. Because yes, of course, at the base level, they do kind of exhibit that behavior, that trait. Of course, greed can be quite greedy. Definitely, he can be. Wrath, lust, pride, sloth, all of them. They certainly have the base level trait that is being exhibited throughout the series. But beyond that, they do have a lot of other characteristics, interesting characteristics that do tie in. Look at someone like Wrath, full of vengeance, and he's powerful. No doubt about it, right? And that at the base level, yes, it makes sense as Wrath. But then beyond that, you see that there is this intense sense of duty as well, isn't there? You look at Greed. Yes, at the base level, he certainly exhibits the greedy nature and then some. But then also you see that he is steadfast, right? That he does have this sense of loyalty, great sense of loyalty to his friends, to his family, his found family, to his subordinates. But yeah, it was a great moment. It really was. And I love that I get to talk about the sins. And I'm sure I'll get to talk about them a lot more in these final 18 episodes as well. They have been some of my favorite characters of this anime, of this story. But then finally, kind of going back to Roy Mustang and Olivier, right? They meet up at the mansion, at the Armstrong mansion. And of course, there's a conversation behind the conversation that's going on. I just love the subtext of their conversation here. Listen, it's not the most subtle, right? But it's still great. It's quite unmissable, I think, for most. I'd say for most, it's really quite unmissable. This whole setup about, okay, so they plan on filling that mansion up, right? He said you could fit a company or an entire battalion, right? So there's that. And then, of course, he's able to slip that message to her. Salim Bradley is Homunculus. And then, of course, in true Roy Mustang fashion, he's able to use his humor as another, trick or tactic to make sure that they can get rid of that message, right? Because you don't know, the gardeners, they could be reporting to someone, right? There's probably a good chance they are reporting to someone. So, they both kind of play their parts. But yeah, you gotta love Roy Mustang. I think now is the time that he's really going to be stepping back into the limelight. Now is the time for Roy Mustang, for sure, from a few different angles, right? But yeah, I think that's about it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in the next few episodes right now, or perhaps full length, timer-based full length, of course, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 47. How cool. Until then, take it easy.